Mr. Speaker, the NDP poorly support children who are not well off. Children suffer because of inaction by the NDP. They suffer because of the priorities of the NDP. There's statistical and empirical evidence to show this. We have a virtual city of care in Manitoba. The number of children in care has increased from 5,000 to almost 10,000 since this government's been in power because this NDP has failed to support children and families. The government's done such a poor job of looking after children in care that 75% of sex trade workers in Manitoba have come from children who've been in care. Besides splitting the department up so there's even less accountability, I asked the Premier, what has he done for Manitoba's poor and vulnerable children that's actually effective?
Mr. Speaker, with specific respect to the number of children in care, one of the things we've done is we provided an extension when a young person reaches 18 years old to continue to receive care and support within the child welfare system. That has grown the number of people officially within the child welfare system by over 400. But they do now get support and care that they never received before. They used to go out of the system at 18, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of their support system in the community. We now provide ongoing supports. It does look like on the numbers there are more children in care, but in reality there are more children being cared for through support of the provincial government's Child and Family Services program.
Mr. Speaker, as Carol Sanders in the Winnipeg Free Press reported today, the dropout rate for Aboriginal youth is 50% of youth in First Nations communities and 33% elsewhere in the province. The Premier directly contributes to this by his failure to support children and families, his failure to ensure adequate housing for those who are poor. Aboriginal children are just as important as every other child in this province. And yet the Premier and his rotating ministers of education have been utterly ineffective in improving graduation rates in First Nation communities. I asked the Premier what he and his Minister of Education are doing that's actually effective in improving the education rates of Aboriginal children in Manitoba.
It's an important question, Mr. Speaker, and one of the programs that we've put in place is a program called the Brighter Futures Program. And that has funded a number of initiatives in school divisions all around Manitoba. I'll just mention one right now. It's called the Pathways Program. It provides additional support to people to get tutoring. It provides a safe place for them to go to do homework and get coaching. It provides them with an opportunity to earn some income, which is set aside so they can go to a post-secondary institution. And there are other programs under different names but accomplish the same thing in many school divisions in Manitoba. In addition, we have other initiatives at the high school level that allow people to complete high school. And we have put forward, on behalf of the Council of the Federation and the Deputy Premier, a request of the federal government to put more money into First Nations education, where each student gets $3,500 less than they would get if they were in the provincial system. The federal government in this current budget has said they will commit an additional $275 million over the next 3 years. We see that as a good beginning. It's a long time this issue has been on the table, but we see a beginning in that now, and we are committed to working with people to get more done.
Mr. Speaker, but the poor housing conditions, the lack of access to running water for Aboriginal children are contributing factors in this continuing very high dropout rate. The government's 12-year reign has failed to ensure adequate housing for families who aren't well off and has failed to bring the desperate need for clean running water, a human right, to 1,400 Manitoba homes. Sadly, the Premier, his ministers, and the board appointees seem to be spending far too much time trying to get free tickets to sports events when they should be ensuring those without running water have this basic human right. When will the Premier use taxpayers' dollars to retrofit homes in northern Manitoba for running water instead of the obscene amounts that he wastes on NDP damage control and NDP entitlements?
Speaker, I appreciate the rhetorical flourish from the member from River Heights. But another practical example of what we've done to stabilize and support the lives of First Nations people in Manitoba. When the recession came in 2008, it was the province of Manitoba that argued that housing for people, including people in First Nations, should be considered as part of the infrastructure program. That resulted in several hundred units of additional housing being built in First Nations communities. And when I visited them, I saw the indicator on the wall of the housing units that were being built under the infrastructure program that we advocated for. And each of those new houses has sewer and running water. There is a backlog on the old houses. And we have said, and I've said this to the member in the legislature, we want to be a part of that solution in two ways. One, through training people in those local communities to do the work, and in a second way, in providing a road to First Nations communities without a federal support contribution that will open up those communities to goods and services at the same cost that we get in the rest of Manitoba.